When it comes to relationships, there's a clear difference between being intelligent and being wise. Intelligence might help you navigate the surface-level aspects of life, but wisdom allows you to form meaningful, lasting connections. Smart men understand this distinction. They know that it's not just about knowledge, but about mastering themselves and their emotions to avoid unnecessary mistakes with women. True confidence, respect, and fulfillment come from within. Men who are guided by self-awareness and discipline, rather than ego or impulsiveness, stand out. They approach relationships with clarity, grounded in their values and purpose. This isn't about playing games or following trends. It's about cultivating character and building connections that matter. In this video, we'll explore 7 mistakes intelligent men avoid with women and uncover how timeless Stoic principles guide them in relationships. From maintaining their individuality to navigating rejection with grace, these lessons aren't just about improving your relationships, they're about improving yourself. By following these insights, you'll learn how to build unshakable confidence and align your actions with your values. Whether you're seeking deeper connections or simply want to grow as a person, these principles will help you attract the right people into your life while staying true to who you are. If you're ready to take control of your relationships and strengthen your mindset, keep watching. These lessons are designed to help you not only avoid common pitfalls, but also thrive as a strong, self-assured individual. Your journey to self-mastery starts now. Let me know if further tweaks are needed. Number 1. Chasing validation. Seeking validation from others is a common mistake many men make in their relationships, especially when they are unsure of their own self-worth. At the heart of this issue lies the desire to feel accepted, loved, and admired, but the pursuit of external approval often leads to insecurity and diminished confidence. The Stoic approach, rooted in self-awareness and discipline, offers a powerful antidote to this behavior. Chasing validation stems from the belief that our worth is determined by how others perceive us. When a man looks for constant approval or attention from women, he often becomes trapped in the cycle of needing reassurance. This dependence on external validation is driven by fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, and fear of being overlooked. However, no matter how much validation a person receives, it is never enough if the foundation of self-worth is weak. Stoicism teaches that true confidence comes from within. The writings of Marcus Aurelius remind us that external events, such as someone's opinion, are beyond our control. Therefore, a man who seeks validation is essentially trying to control something that is outside his power. Instead, he should focus on controlling his own thoughts, actions, and beliefs. By doing so, he frees himself from the constant need for approval. A man who understands Stoic principles recognizes that his value is not determined by how others perceive him, but by how he conducts himself. When a man chases validation, he often becomes consumed by external factors, making his happiness dependent on someone else's approval. This not only erodes his confidence, but also leaves him vulnerable to the whims of others, unable to trust his own sense of self. Self-validation, on the other hand, is a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius encourages us to reflect inward and cultivate a sense of self-worth that is independent of external validation. By focusing on what we can control, our thoughts, actions, and values, a man becomes more resilient and secure in who he is. This allows him to approach relationships with authenticity and confidence, rather than seeking constant reassurance from others. Moreover, chasing validation often leads to unhealthy behaviors such as people-pleasing or trying to manipulate others' opinions. A man who seeks external validation often sacrifices his own values and desires, to fit someone else's expectations. However, Stoicism emphasizes staying true to oneself, regardless of how others might respond. By adhering to this principle, a man creates stronger connections based on mutual respect and authenticity rather than superficial approval. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." This wisdom highlights the importance of staying committed to one's own values, even when others may not fully understand or appreciate them. A man who embraces this mindset becomes less concerned with what others think and more focused on his own growth. Another key Stoic insight is the concept of indifference to external judgments. While it doesn't mean detachment from relationships, it does emphasize the importance of prioritizing what is within our control, our own actions, character, and purpose, rather than what others think or feel about us. When a man is free from the need for validation, he can pursue relationships with a clearer, more grounded sense of purpose. Chasing validation also often leads to unnecessary suffering. When a man's self-worth is tied to someone else's approval, he becomes anxious and uncertain, constantly seeking reassurance that may never come. This emotional dependency can create feelings of frustration, disappointment, and insecurity. The Stoic approach teaches us to accept things as they are, focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we cannot. Self-worth that is rooted in Stoicism encourages a man to cultivate inner virtues like courage, wisdom, and resilience, rather than seeking approval from others. When he builds his self-esteem from within, his confidence grows naturally, and he is less likely to depend on external validation to feel whole. In relationships, a man who chases validation often becomes overly concerned with how others perceive him, leading to behavior that may feel inauthentic. Instead of acting from a place of authenticity, he may become preoccupied with trying to please others or conform to their expectations. This dynamic can lead to a loss of individuality, which often results in dissatisfaction and frustration in the relationship. A Stoic man understands that seeking validation is a trap because it places too much emphasis on external factors. Instead, he focuses on cultivating virtues like self-control, independence, and self-respect. By adhering to these principles, he remains grounded in his sense of self-worth and is better able to form genuine, meaningful connections based on trust and mutual respect. Ultimately, the pursuit of validation is a path that often leads to unhappiness and insecurity. A Stoic man, however, chooses to focus on self-mastery and living according to his values. By letting go of the need for external validation, he creates a life of confidence, clarity, and purpose, allowing him to attract relationships built on authenticity rather than dependence. Number 2. Ignoring red flags. One of the most common mistakes intelligent men make in relationships is ignoring red flags. Red flags are subtle signs or warning indicators that something might be off in a person's behavior, character, or compatibility. These warning signs often show up early, but are often dismissed or overlooked due to emotions like infatuation, optimism, or the desire to avoid conflict. However, ignoring these red flags can lead to long-term regret, disappointment, and pain. The root cause of ignoring red flags is often a reluctance to face uncomfortable truths. Men who fall into this trap tend to prioritize their desires and emotions over logic and reason. They may convince themselves that the warning signs aren't as serious as they seem, or that things will improve with time. But the Stoic approach teaches us to confront reality, no matter how difficult it may be, rather than ignoring the truth. Stoicism emphasizes the importance of clarity and self-awareness. A wise man understands that ignoring red flags is often a sign of attachment to outcomes that may not be in his best interest. The writings of Marcus Aurelius remind us that what we seek is often beyond our control, and attempting to force situations to align with our desires only leads to disappointment. A man who ignores red flags might believe that his persistence or good intentions will be enough to fix a flawed dynamic, but this approach rarely brings lasting fulfillment. Red flags often appear in the form of inconsistent behavior, dishonesty, disrespect, or incompatibility. A man who dismisses these signs tends to believe that love or emotional attachment will outweigh these fundamental issues. However, Stoicism teaches that it's our values and principles that define our character, not fleeting emotions. Ignoring red flags compromises both integrity and peace of mind. The problem with ignoring red flags is that they often become more prominent over time. What may seem minor in the beginning can escalate into more serious problems later on. A man who ignores these signs may find himself trapped in a relationship built on false expectations, leading to resentment and regret. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, said, "It is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about those events." Ignoring red flags is a form of poor judgment that often leads to unnecessary suffering. Men who ignore red flags often do so because they fear rejection or the discomfort of ending a relationship. They may fear being alone or losing someone they care about, which can cloud their judgment. However, Stoicism encourages us to embrace discomfort as a natural part of life. The fear of loss should not prevent a man from acknowledging the truth. In fact, recognizing and accepting these red flags allows for a healthier, more authentic relationship, or, at the very least, the freedom to move on from something that no longer serves his growth or well-being. Ignoring red flags often stems from the belief that change is possible, despite clear evidence to the contrary. A Stoic man understands that while external circumstances can't always be controlled, his response to them can. He avoids the trap of false hope and instead focuses on what is within his power, accepting reality as it is rather than as he wishes it to be. Another reason intelligent men ignore red flags is the tendency to idealize others. They may project qualities onto someone that they wish to see, rather than accepting the person for who they truly are. Stoicism teaches us to recognize people and situations for what they are, not for what we wish they could be. A man who accepts the reality of a relationship avoids the danger of self-deception, leading to more grounded and honest connections. By ignoring red flags, men often sacrifice their own values and integrity in the pursuit of companionship. The Stoic principle of maintaining virtue and staying true to oneself becomes paramount in relationships. A man who prioritizes his values and principles avoids relationships that compromise his sense of self-worth. Epictetus said, "First, say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." An intelligent man who ignores red flags often loses sight of this clarity. By failing to heed the warning signs, he risks becoming entangled in a relationship that erodes his values, sense of purpose, and inner peace. In relationships, the consequences of ignoring red flags are rarely immediate, but tend to accumulate over time. A man who fails to address these issues may find himself trapped in cycles of disappointment, dissatisfaction, and even resentment. These feelings are often the result of neglecting to listen to one's intuition or the subtle cues that point to deeper incompatibility or dysfunction. A Stoic man, on the other hand, is guided by self-awareness and the understanding that not every relationship is meant to endure. He approaches life with acceptance and wisdom, recognizing that certain red flags are warning signs for a reason. By refusing to ignore them, he saves himself from unnecessary heartache and the burden of living out a false narrative. Ultimately, Ignoring red flags is a mistake that many intelligent men make, often out of fear or the desire to preserve what they perceive as fragile relationships. However, the Stoic approach encourages men to confront reality with courage and clarity. By acknowledging these warning signs and acting in alignment with their values, they can avoid unnecessary suffering and build relationships that are rooted in truth, integrity, and authenticity. Number 3. Sacrificing their purpose for a relationship. One of the most damaging mistakes intelligent men make in relationships is sacrificing their purpose or personal goals in favor of maintaining the relationship. This often stems from a deep desire for connection, fear of abandonment, or the belief that their worth is tied to being part of a partnership. However, when a man prioritizes a relationship at the cost of his purpose, he risks losing his sense of identity, fulfillment, and long-term happiness. Sacrificing one's purpose is a mistake because it creates an imbalance. A man who sacrifices his purpose often loses sight of what drives him, leaving him feeling unfulfilled and unaligned with his values. Relationships, though significant, should complement a man's life, not replace his sense of self. When a man gives up his ambitions, goals, or passions solely to please a partner, he may find himself in a position where he feels disconnected from his true self, leading to resentment and regret. Stoicism teaches that a man's purpose is fundamental to his identity. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that external events, such as relationships, are beyond our control, and that focusing on what is within our power, like our character and actions, provides true fulfillment. Sacrificing purpose for a relationship often stems from the belief that love or companionship should take precedence. But this approach fails to account for the importance of maintaining one's integrity and sense of self. A man who sacrifices his purpose tends to lose his motivation, direction, and clarity. His identity becomes entwined with the relationship, which can leave him feeling lost or disconnected when things inevitably change. This isn't to say that relationships are unimportant, but they should never come at the expense of personal growth and self-development. Many men fall into this trap out of fear of being alone or the desire to be accepted. They may believe that a successful relationship requires complete self-sacrifice, especially when faced with external pressures or societal expectations. However, the Stoic approach rejects this notion, encouraging men to stay grounded in their values and maintain their sense of purpose, regardless of the external circumstances. Sacrificing one's purpose can also lead to a lack of confidence. When a man's identity is tied to the relationship, he often feels dependent on his partner's approval or presence. This dependence erodes his autonomy, making him vulnerable to feelings of insecurity and self-doubt. A Stoic man, on the other hand, remains committed to his goals, knowing that his worth comes from within. Moreover, sacrificing purpose often creates an unhealthy dynamic where one partner becomes resentful or frustrated. A man who abandons his goals may begin to feel unfulfilled, and this dissatisfaction often spills over into the relationship. He might become less motivated, lose passion, or feel as though he is merely existing rather than thriving. The Stoic wisdom of accepting what is within one's control, like one's purpose, ensures that a man remains aligned with his values, even in relationships. Epictetus reminds us that we must focus on what is truly within our control and let go of the rest. A man who sacrifices his purpose risks becoming consumed by things outside of his control, such as pleasing a partner or meeting unrealistic expectations. By maintaining focus on his values and ambitions, he cultivates a life of meaning, even when navigating relationships. The mistake of sacrificing one's purpose often arises when a man defines his worth by external validation, whether that comes from a relationship or approval from others. This dependency on external validation creates a fragile sense of self that is easily shaken. A Stoic man understands that his worth is built upon his character, principles, and actions, not the approval of others or the pursuit of love. Another key Stoic principle is the concept of living according to nature. A man who neglects his purpose fails to live in harmony with his true nature, which leads to inner conflict and unhappiness. When a man sacrifices his purpose, he often experiences a disconnect from his values, resulting in feelings of emptiness. By staying true to himself, he ensures that his relationships are founded on authenticity and self-awareness. Sacrificing purpose also leads to a lack of resilience. A man who abandons his goals in the pursuit of a relationship may struggle to weather the ups and downs that life inevitably brings. In contrast, a Stoic man recognizes that challenges are an inevitable part of life and focuses on building his strength and character to face them head-on. Number 4. Overreacting to rejection. One of the most common mistakes intelligent men make in their relationships is overreacting to rejection. Rejection can be a painful and uncomfortable experience, triggering feelings of inadequacy, embarrassment, or failure. However, many men respond to rejection in ways that undermine their confidence and self-esteem. Overreacting to rejection typically stems from a deep-rooted fear of failure, a need for external validation, or an attachment to outcomes beyond their control. Stoicism offers a powerful framework for navigating rejection, emphasizing that our responses to events are what truly matter, not the events themselves. When a man overreacts to rejection, he often gives away his power by allowing external circumstances, such as someone else's opinion or acceptance, to define his self-worth. This kind of overreaction leads to unnecessary emotional turmoil and diminishes his ability to move forward with clarity and confidence. Stoicism teaches that we cannot control the actions or opinions of others, but we can control our responses. A man who overreacts to rejection tends to magnify the pain and frustration associated with it, allowing his emotions to spiral out of control. He may become consumed by self-doubt, worry, or even bitterness, believing that rejection is a reflection of his intrinsic worth rather than a temporary event. However, a Stoic man understands that rejection is often a natural part of life and does not diminish his inherent value. The mistake of overreacting to rejection is often fueled by a belief that rejection signals failure or inadequacy. In reality, rejection is merely an outcome of circumstances, not a definitive judgment of one's worth. A Stoic man recognizes that he cannot control how others perceive him, but he can control how he chooses to respond. By maintaining this perspective, he avoids the trap of attaching his self-esteem to the approval or acceptance of others. Overreacting to rejection also stems from a lack of emotional resilience. Men who become overly attached to the outcome of relationships may struggle to accept that rejection is a normal part of life. They may perceive rejection as a personal flaw rather than an opportunity for growth. A Stoic man, however, views rejection as an opportunity to practice equanimity and resilience. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, reminds us that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When a man overreacts to rejection, he often takes it as a sign of personal failure rather than recognizing it as a chance to learn and grow. Rejection provides valuable feedback, whether it's about compatibility, timing, or personal growth, that can help a man improve and move forward. Overreacting prevents him from processing these lessons constructively, keeping him stuck in self-doubt and regret. The Stoic philosophy also encourages detachment from outcomes, reminding us that external events, like rejection, are beyond our control. A man who overreacts tends to focus on what he cannot change, amplifying his discomfort and frustration. By embracing Stoic principles of acceptance and surrender, he learns to detach from the need for constant approval, allowing himself to stay grounded in his sense of self-worth. Another common reaction to rejection is the tendency to seek external validation to cope with the emotional pain. A man who overreacts may obsessively seek approval from others, thinking that validation will restore his sense of self-worth. However, Stoicism teaches that relying on external approval leads to instability and dependence. By focusing on his own values, character, and virtue, a man builds a sense of self-worth that is not contingent on others' opinions. Epictetus also taught that we should bear in mind constantly the principle that appearances are deceptive and the things they concern are not inherently good or evil. Overreacting to rejection is often the result of attaching too much significance to external judgments, failing to see rejection as a neutral event rather than a reflection of one's intrinsic value. Men who overreact to rejection also tend to lose confidence and become hesitant in future interactions. They may fear being rejected again, which can lead to avoidance or a reluctance to take risks. A Stoic man, however, accepts rejection as a natural part of life and views each encounter as an opportunity to practice courage, growth, and self-mastery. By letting go of the need for validation, a Stoic man remains focused on his own virtues and pursuits, rather than becoming consumed by the opinions of others. He understands that his self-worth is not determined by external factors, but by his character and the actions he takes. In this way, Stoicism helps men avoid the destructive habit of overreacting to rejection. Ultimately, overreacting to rejection stems from a misunderstanding of what truly matters. Rejection is a temporary experience, not a reflection of one's worth or value. A Stoic man, through self-awareness and discipline, learns to detach from external judgments and maintain his sense of self-worth, allowing him to navigate rejection with resilience, clarity, and confidence. Number 5. Being overly controlling or possessive. One of the most common mistakes intelligent men make in relationships is being overly controlling or possessive. This behavior often stems from insecurity, fear of loss, or a deep-rooted desire for control. Men who exhibit controlling or possessive tendencies may feel that they need to exert dominance over their partner to ensure their commitment, attention, or emotional security. However, this approach rarely leads to healthy or lasting relationships. The Stoic philosophy emphasizes the importance of acceptance, self-mastery, and detachment. A man who tries to control his partner is typically failing to recognize what is within his power and what is beyond it. The desire to control stems from a fear of uncertainty, often driven by a belief that if he can control his partner's actions, thoughts, or feelings, he will find security. However, a Stoic man understands that trying to control others is futile because it goes against the natural order of things. Marcus Aurelius, a prominent Stoic philosopher, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." A man who is overly controlling tends to focus on trying to manipulate external circumstances, including his partner's behavior, instead of recognizing what he can actually control: his own actions, thoughts, and responses. By fixating on controlling others, he relinquishes his inner peace and becomes consumed by anxiety and fear of losing control. Controlling behavior often emerges from a desire to protect oneself from feelings of vulnerability or rejection. Men who are overly possessive may feel that their self-worth is tied to their partner's actions, believing that their partner's independence threatens their sense of security. However, true confidence and self-worth come from within and are not reliant on external validation or the approval of others. A Stoic man understands that he cannot control the actions or thoughts of others, but he can control his own response to these external events. Possessiveness often leads to mistrust and resentment. When a man feels the need to monitor, restrict, or dominate his partner, it communicates a lack of trust in both himself and the relationship. A Stoic man, on the other hand, understands that trust is built on integrity, mutual respect, and understanding, not control. By focusing on his own character and maintaining clarity of mind, he avoids the trap of possessiveness. Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher, said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is not bestowed by others, it is achieved by you." A man who is overly controlling fails to recognize that true freedom in a relationship comes from trusting his partner's autonomy and allowing them the space to be themselves. By trying to control his partner, he imposes constraints that ultimately undermine the relationship's foundation. Overly controlling behavior often arises from insecurity, particularly when a man feels that he lacks confidence in his own worth or value. Instead of building confidence through self-awareness and self-mastery, he seeks to shore up his sense of security by controlling external factors. However, Stoicism teaches that confidence comes from knowing and accepting one's limits and virtues, not from attempting to control others. Another mistake of controlling men is their inability to accept uncertainty and impermanence. Life is inherently unpredictable, and relationships are no different. A man who tries to control his partner is often unwilling to accept that outcomes are not always within his control. This leads to a cycle of anxiety and dissatisfaction. A Stoic man, by contrast, learns to accept what is beyond his control and focus on what he can influence, his own actions, thoughts, and responses. Control also often leads to power struggles within relationships. A controlling man tends to create an environment of tension where his partner feels stifled, disconnected, or resentful. In contrast, a Stoic man understands that power comes from self-mastery, not domination. By embracing humility and accepting the limitations of control, he cultivates healthier and more balanced relationships. Possessiveness also impairs a man's ability to find genuine connection. When a man is overly focused on controlling his partner's behavior, he often overlooks the importance of trust and respect. Relationships built on control are rarely fulfilling or sustainable, as they lack genuine emotional intimacy. A Stoic man prioritizes virtue, integrity, and authenticity, knowing that these qualities foster deeper, more meaningful connections. Number 6. Suppressing emotions. Instead of communicating. One of the most common mistakes intelligent men make in relationships is suppressing their emotions instead of communicating openly. This often stems from a cultural expectation that men should appear strong, stoic, and emotionally unaffected. Men who believe that expressing emotions is a sign of weakness tend to avoid discussing their feelings, instead burying them deep inside. However, this approach rarely leads to lasting peace or understanding in relationships. Stoicism emphasizes the importance of self-awareness and acceptance of emotions, but it does not advocate suppression. Emotions are natural and inevitable, and denying or suppressing them only leads to internal conflict and unresolved tension. A Stoic man understands that emotions are neither inherently good nor bad, but rather a part of the human experience. By suppressing emotions, he risks building up resentment, frustration, and a distorted perception of reality. The mistake of suppressing emotions is often driven by a fear of vulnerability. Men may feel that exposing their true feelings will make them appear weak or less competent in the eyes of others. However, Stoicism teaches that true strength comes from accepting one's emotions and responding to them with equanimity. A Stoic man recognizes that suppressing emotions leads to a false sense of control, but ultimately results in inner turmoil. When emotions are suppressed, they do not simply disappear. They are internalized and can lead to stress, anxiety, and even physical health issues. Men who avoid expressing their emotions often struggle to build genuine connections with others, as communication becomes shallow and transactional. A Stoic man understands that emotions are neither a weakness nor something to fear, but rather signals that can guide us toward greater self-awareness and understanding. Suppression of emotions also prevents men from developing authentic relationships. A relationship based on surface-level interactions is unlikely to foster deep intimacy. By suppressing emotions, a man denies his partner the opportunity to understand him fully, leading to misunderstandings, mistrust, and eventual disconnection. A Stoic man, on the other hand, knows that expressing emotions honestly, even the difficult ones, strengthens the bond between himself and others. Epictetus once said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Men who suppress emotions tend to distort their reality, creating an internal narrative that fuels fear and doubt. Instead of acknowledging their emotions and addressing the root causes, they create a barrier between themselves and others, thereby reducing their ability to communicate effectively. The Stoic philosophy teaches that emotions should be acknowledged and accepted, but not allowed to control one's actions. A Stoic man recognizes the importance of distinguishing between what is within his control and what is not. Suppressing emotions often stems from a belief that emotions are uncontrollable or must be eliminated, but in reality, emotions are only problematic when they are allowed to dominate one's thoughts and decisions. Men who suppress emotions also tend to project frustration or passive aggressiveness, which creates confusion and tension within relationships. This passive communication style often leads to unresolved conflicts, as their true feelings remain hidden beneath a surface of silence or indifference. A Stoic man, by contrast, practices clear and intentional communication, understanding that transparency fosters deeper trust and connection. Another reason men suppress emotions is the fear of rejection or judgment. They may believe that expressing their true feelings will lead to criticism or rejection from others. However, Stoicism teaches that external judgments should not dictate one's sense of self-worth. A man who suppresses emotions allows his fear of rejection to control his actions, rather than confronting the discomfort of expressing his true self. Moreover, suppressing emotions often contributes to a lack of self-awareness. A man who avoids exploring his emotions may become disconnected from his own values and motivations. By acknowledging his emotions, he gains greater insight into his thoughts, desires, and beliefs, allowing him to act with clarity and purpose. A Stoic man understands that self-awareness is a critical part of living a virtuous life. In relationships, suppressing emotions creates a dynamic of imbalance, where one partner may feel disconnected or uncertain about the other's true thoughts and feelings. This lack of emotional transparency often leads to misunderstandings, resentment, and even the erosion of trust. A Stoic man, however, recognizes the importance of emotional honesty and communication, understanding that these are essential for building meaningful and authentic connections. Ultimately, suppressing emotions in relationships prevents men from experiencing true intimacy and understanding. By choosing to communicate openly, a Stoic man can navigate his emotions with clarity and purpose. Emotions are neither obstacles to be avoided nor weaknesses to be suppressed. They are essential parts of human nature that, when acknowledged and understood, can lead to greater self-awareness, resilience, and deeper relationships. Number 7. Losing their identity in a relationship. One of the most common mistakes intelligent men make in relationships is losing their sense of identity and individuality. This often happens when men become so absorbed in the relationship that they forget who they are outside of it. They may prioritize their partner's needs, desires, and expectations above their own, leading to a gradual erosion of their sense of self. Men who lose their identity in relationships tend to compromise their values, goals, and passions, believing that their worth is tied exclusively to the relationship. However, this leads to dissatisfaction, lack of fulfillment, and ultimately, resentment. Stoicism offers a valuable perspective on the importance of maintaining one's identity, emphasizing that our virtues, principles, and sense of self are integral to living a flourishing life. A Stoic man understands that while relationships can bring joy and companionship, they should never come at the cost of one's core values and individuality. By losing their identity, men may become overly dependent on their partners for validation, approval, and purpose, causing their sense of self to become subordinated to the relationship. Marcus Aurelius, a key Stoic figure, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." A man who loses his identity in a relationship often surrenders his autonomy, giving away his control to external circumstances and the expectations of his partner. This loss of identity can manifest in various ways, whether it's abandoning personal goals, passions, or relationships with others, to focus exclusively on the relationship itself. A Stoic man, however, understands that true fulfillment comes from living in accordance with his values and virtues, not from seeking external validation or approval. When a man loses his identity in a relationship, he may begin to neglect his own interests, hobbies, or aspirations. The relationship can become his primary source of purpose, leaving him disconnected from his own sense of self. This often stems from a fear of rejection or abandonment, causing men to cling to the relationship as a means of maintaining a sense of security. However, Stoicism teaches that the pursuit of self-mastery and integrity is far more important than relying on external circumstances, including relationships, for validation. A Stoic man recognizes that his identity is formed by his actions, beliefs, and virtues, not by the approval or presence of another person. By staying grounded in his sense of self, he is better able to navigate relationships without sacrificing his values or losing his personal autonomy. The key is to maintain a balance between self-awareness and connection, ensuring that the relationship complements rather than diminishes his individuality. When men lose their identity in relationships, they often become reactive rather than proactive, focusing on pleasing their partner at the expense of their own needs. This can lead to feelings of resentment, frustration, and dissatisfaction as they realize that they have sacrificed too much of themselves. A Stoic man, however, understands that self-awareness and self-mastery are essential for maintaining a healthy relationship, where both partners contribute equally without losing sight of who they are. Epictetus, another influential Stoic philosopher, advised, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." A man who loses his identity tends to forget this fundamental principle, becoming absorbed in the relationship and losing sight of his true self. Instead of seeking external validation or deriving his worth from his partner, a Stoic man remains connected to his values, goals, and sense of purpose. Men who lose their identity often become enmeshed in the relationship, seeking their worth through their partner's validation. This can result in a lack of boundaries, making it difficult to separate their personal lives from the relationship. A Stoic man understands that boundaries are essential for maintaining both individuality and connection, allowing him to stay grounded and focused on his personal growth. A key mistake made by men who lose their identity is the belief that the relationship defines their self-worth. However, Stoicism teaches that our self-worth comes from our virtues, not external circumstances. A man who stays connected to his sense of purpose, values, and passions is far less likely to lose his identity, as he remains in control of his own life. Another issue with losing identity in a relationship is the tendency to suppress personal growth in favor of the relationship. A Stoic man recognizes that growth is a continuous process, and a healthy relationship should complement that growth rather than hinder it. By prioritizing self-mastery and remaining committed to his own development, he ensures that the relationship remains a source of support and not a barrier to his personal journey. In conclusion, losing one's identity in a relationship is a significant mistake that intelligent men can make. Stoicism provides guidance on how to avoid this by emphasizing self-awareness, self-mastery, and the importance of maintaining one's core values and sense of purpose. A Stoic man understands that while relationships can offer joy and companionship, true fulfillment comes from staying connected to his virtues and goals, ensuring that his identity remains intact and resilient, regardless of external circumstances.